She stood on the rain-slicked pavement, clutching a broken heel, while the heavy oak doors of the Danvers estate slammed shut in her face. Inside, the sound of crystal glasses clinking and laughter erupted, laughter at her expense. Her husband, the man she had promised to love forever, had just dragged her out of his own anniversary gala, calling her a worthless embarrassment in front of the city's elite. He thought he had discarded a piece of trash. He didn't know he had just declared war on the sole heiress to the Rutherford Empire. Tonight, Phillips Danvers didn't just lose a wife. He invited a hurricane to his doorstep. The chandeliers inside the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel in New York City didn't just sparkle. They judged. Or at least, that was how Maya felt as she stood near the periphery of the room, clutching a glass of lukewarm tap water she had managed to get from a passing waiter who looked at her with more pity than respect. Maya smoothed the fabric of her dress. It was a simple navy blue A-line she had bought off the rack at Macy's 3 years ago. It was clean, modest, and fit her well, but in a room filled with custom Versace, vintage Chanel, and diamonds that cost more than a suburban house, Maya looked exactly like what her mother-in-law, Beatrice Danvers, called her. The help. "Stop fidgeting. You look nervous and it makes you look guilty," a sharp voice hissed near her ear. Maya flinched and turned to see Beatrice looming over her. The matriarch of the Danvers family was draped in emerald silk that clashed violently with her permanent scowl. "I'm just waiting for Phillips, Beatrice," Maya said softly, keeping her eyes lowered. "He said he needed me to meet the investors from the Kensington Group." Beatrice let out a dry, rattling laugh. "Oh, you poor, delusional girl. Phillips doesn't need you to meet the Kensington partners. He needs you to stay invisible so he can charm them. Do you really think he wants a penniless orphan with no pedigree standing next to him while he closes the deal of the century?" Maya bit her lip, tasting iron. "I'm his wife." "You are a mistake," Beatrice corrected, sipping her champagne. "A college fling that went on too long. Look at him, Maya. That is where he belongs." Maya looked across the room. Under the golden glow of the center dome, Phillips Danvers held court. He was undeniably handsome, with the kind of sharp jawline and perfectly coiffed sandy hair that graced the covers of Forbes and GQ. He was laughing at something a tall, stunning blonde woman was whispering in his ear. The woman was Tiffany St. Clair, daughter of a senator, wealthy, connected, and wearing a backless red dress that screamed, "Future wife." Maya felt a familiar ache in her chest. For 2 years she had tried. She had cooked Phillips's favorite meals, ironed his shirts when the maid was sick, and tolerated Beatrice's endless insults about Maya's unknown parents and lack of dowry. She had believed Phillips when he said he loved her simplicity, her grounding presence. But lately, grounding had turned into boring, and simplicity had turned into embarrassing. "Go find a corner and stay there," Beatrice commanded, turning on her heel. "And for heaven's sake, put that water down. It looks like you're begging for scraps." Maya placed the glass on a passing tray and folded her arms, trying to make herself smaller. She watched as Phillips placed a hand on Tiffany's lower back, guiding her toward a group of older men in tuxedos. He didn't look for Maya. He hadn't looked for her since they arrived 2 hours ago. She decided to go to the restroom to splash water on her face. She needed 5 minutes to compose herself before the toasts began. As she navigated through the crowd, trying not to bump into anyone, she overheard voices coming from a semi-private alcove near the bar. "I don't know why he keeps her around, honestly," a man's voice said. It was loud, slurred by too much expensive scotch. Maya recognized it. Gary, Phillips's best friend and business partner. "Optics, Gary. Optics," Phillips's voice replied. Maya froze. She stood behind a large potted fern, her heart hammering against her ribs. What optics? Gary laughed. She looks like she wandered in from a bus stop. Tiffany is all over you, man. The St. Clair merger would be a lot smoother if you weren't dragging the charity case around. Maya held her breath, waiting for Phillips to defend her, to say she was intelligent or kind, or that he loved her. I know, Phillips sighed. The sound was heavy with irritation. But the divorce needs to be timed right. If I dump her now, before the IPO launches next month, the press might paint me as heartless. Tech mogul abandons wife before big payday. It's bad PR. I have to wait until the stock stabilizes. So you're stuck with the mouse, only for a few more weeks, Phillips said. Besides, she's harmless. She doesn't have the spine to leave, and she has nowhere to go. She's entirely dependent on me. It's pathetic, really. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Pathetic. Maya didn't cry. The shock was too cold for tears. She backed away slowly, her heels silent on the plush carpet. She had nowhere to go. He was right. Her parents had died in a car crash when she was 4. She had bounced between foster homes until she aged out. Phillips had been her first real family, or so she thought. She turned to flee toward the exit, needing fresh air, but she collided hard with a solid figure. Watch it! Red wine splashed across a pristine white tuxedo jacket. The music in the ballroom seemed to stop. The chatter died down. Maya looked up in horror. She had just run into Arthur Hamilton, the CEO of Hamilton Holdings, the most important investor in the room, the man Phillips was desperate to impress. And she had just ruined his suit. You clumsy little idiot. The voice wasn't Hamilton's, it was Phillips's. He materialized out of the crowd, grabbing Maya's arm with a grip that bruised. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at Arthur Hamilton, his face pale with panic. Mr. Hamilton, I am so incredibly sorry, Phillips stammered, pulling a silk handkerchief from his pocket and dabbing ineffectively at the older man's lapel. She's not well. She shouldn't be here. Arthur Hamilton, a man with steel-grey hair and eyes to match, brushed Phillips's hand away. He looked at Maya, not with anger, but with a strange, penetrating curiosity. It is just wine, Mr. Danvers. However, the lady seems distressed. She's drunk, Beatrice announced, stepping into the circle that had formed around them. The guests whispered behind their hands. Tiffany St. Clair stood nearby, smirking, her phone raised as if recording the scene. I'm not drunk, Maya whispered, her voice trembling. I haven't had a drop of alcohol. Don't lie to them, Phillips snapped, spinning on her. His eyes were dark, void of any of the warmth she remembered from their wedding day. Look at you. You're a mess. You've been embarrassing me all night. And now you ruin Mr. Hamilton's jacket? Do you have any idea how much this suit costs? More than you've made in your entire life. Phillips, please, Maya said, realizing the entire room was watching. Let's just go home. No, Phillips said, his voice rising. The adrenaline of the potential business failure was making him reckless. He needed a scapegoat. He needed to show Hamilton that he didn't tolerate incompetence, even from his wife, especially from his wife. I am not going anywhere. You are leaving. What? I said get out, Phillips hissed. You don't belong here, Maya. You never did. Look around you. These are people of substance, people of worth. You're just a burden. The cruelty of the words hung in the air like smoke. Even Beatrice looked momentarily surprised by his ferocity, though she quickly recovered and nodded in agreement. Phillips, we are married, Maya said, her voice gaining a sudden, steel-like edge she didn't know she possessed. You are humiliating me. You humiliated yourself, Phillips yelled. He grabbed her arm again, harder this time, and began dragging her toward the grand double doors of the ballroom. "Phillips, stop!" Maya struggled, her heel twisting on the floor. "Get out!" He shoved the heavy doors open. The security guards outside looked uncomfortable but didn't intervene. Mr. Danvers was the client, after all. Phillips pushed her past the threshold, out into the lobby, and then continued toward the main entrance of the hotel. It was raining outside, a torrential New York downpour. "Phillips, I don't have a coat. I don't have money for a cab," Maya pleaded, the cold air from the revolving doors hitting her bare arms. "Walk," Phillips sneered. "Maybe the rain will wash off the stench of failure. Don't come back to the penthouse tonight. I don't want to see your face until I've fixed the mess you made with Hamilton." He gave her one final shove. Maya stumbled, catching her heel in the grate of the entryway mat. She fell hard onto the wet concrete of the sidewalk outside the hotel. The heel of her shoe snapped with a loud crack. Passers-by stopped and stared. A doorman took a half-step forward, but stopped when Phillips held up a hand. "She's fine," Phillips barked at the staff. "Leave her." He looked down at his wife, sprawled on the wet pavement, her hair plastered to her face, her knee bleeding. "You're pathetic, Maya," he said, repeating the words from the alcove. "Do us both a favor and disappear." He turned his back on her and walked back into the warmth of the plaza, dusting off his hands as if he had just taken out the garbage. Maya sat there for a moment, the rain soaking through her thin dress, chilling her to the bone. The physical pain in her knee was nothing compared to the hollow cavern in her chest. She watched the golden revolving door spin, sealing him inside with the champagne and the laughter. She slowly unbuckled her broken shoe and threw it into the gutter. She stood up, barefoot on the cold New York sidewalk. She reached into her small clutch. Phillips thought she had nothing. He thought she was just Maya, the orphan from Ohio. She pulled out a small, worn piece of paper she had kept hidden in the lining of her purse for 20 years. It was a phone number, a number her mother had given her just before the crash, whispering, "If you are ever truly alone, if you have no one left, call this number. Tell them who you are." Maya had never called it. She had been too afraid, too proud, and then she had found Phillips. She thought she didn't need it. She dialed the number with shaking fingers. It rang once, twice. Rutherford Residence, private line. A stiff British voice answered. "I—" Maya's voice cracked. She cleared her throat and looked up at the Plaza Hotel, her eyes hardening. "I need to speak to Harold Rutherford." "Mr. Rutherford does not take unsolicited calls. Who is this?" "Tell him." Maya took a deep breath, the rain mingling with the tears on her face. "Tell him it's Maya. Maya Antoinette Rutherford. Tell him his granddaughter has finally come home." There was a silence on the other end, so profound it felt like the line had gone dead. Then a sharp intake of breath. "Miss Maya? Good heavens, hold the line. Do not hang up. I am transferring you to the master immediately." 30 seconds later, a deep, gravelly voice thundered through the phone. It sounded like old mountains and iron. "Maya?" "Grandfather," she whispered, "I need you." "Where are you?" The voice was commanding, terrifying and fiercely protective. "The plaza, outside. He threw me out." "Who did?" The tone dropped an octave. It was the voice of a man who could buy and sell countries. "My husband. Phillips Danvers." A pause. Then a sound that chilled her blood and warmed her heart simultaneously. "Stay right there, child. Do not move. I am in the city. I was coming to inspect the Hamilton deal personally. It seems I have a new priority." "Grandfather, I look like a mess. I have no shoes." "It doesn't matter," Harold Rutherford growled. "In 20 minutes, you will be the most powerful woman in that building. And Phillips Danvers, He will wish he had never been born. Maya lowered the phone. A sleek black limousine with flags on the hood turned the corner, followed by two massive SUVs. They weren't just cars, they were a cavalcade. The lead car screeched to a halt in front of her. The back door flew open before the car even fully stopped. An old man with a silver cane and a coat that cost more than Phillips's entire company stepped out into the rain, ignoring the umbrella his driver held out. He looked at Maya, really looked at her, and his hard, lined face crumbled into pure grief and love. "My girl," he choked out, pulling her into a crushing hug. "My poor, lost girl." Maya buried her face in his cashmere coat and finally let herself weep. "I've got you," Harold whispered into her hair, his eyes glaring at the plaza's entrance with the fury of a vengeful god. "Dry your tears, Maya. Tonight we don't cry. Tonight we take everything." The interior of the limousine was quiet, save for the hum of the engine and the rhythmic drumming of a rain against the bulletproof glass. It smelled of aged leather and expensive scotch, a scent that usually made Maya anxious, reminding her of Phillips's drinking. But here, mixed with the faint aroma of cigar smoke and peppermint, it felt safe. Harold Rutherford sat opposite her, his cane resting between his knees, his sharp eyes scanning her face as if trying to memorize every feature. He had wrapped her in a blanket of cashmere so thick it felt like a weighted shield. "Why?" Maya asked, her voice raspy. She gripped a crystal tumbler of water Harold's assistant, a stoic man named Giles, had poured for her. "Why now? Why did you never come for me?" Harold's expression darkened, a shadow passing over his face that looked like a thunderhead. "Your father, my son, was a stubborn man. He wanted a simple life. He rejected the Rutherford legacy. When he married your mother, they cut ties. They wanted to raise you away from the vultures, as he called them." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "When the accident happened, I was in Tokyo. By the time I returned, you were gone. The system had swallowed you. The records were sealed, names were changed. I have spent 20 years turning over every stone on this earth to find you. I hired private armies. I bribed officials. And all this time, you were right here, hiding in plain sight, married to that insect." Maya looked down at her hands. The wedding ring on her finger felt heavy, like a shackle. He wasn't always a monster. Or maybe he was, and I was just too desperate for love to see it. "You are a Rutherford," Harold stated firmly. "We do not beg for love. We command respect. And if respect is not given, we buy the building and evict the disrespect." The car slowed to a halt. Maya looked out the window. They hadn't gone far. They were at the Pierre Hotel, just a few blocks up from the plaza. "Why are we here?" "Because you need armor," Harold said. He tapped the partition. "Giles, is the team ready?" "Waiting in the presidential suite, sir," Giles replied from the front seat. They were ushered into the hotel through a private entrance. The staff bowed, actually bowed, as Harold walked past. In the elevator, Harold turned to her. "Tonight, Phillips Danvers thinks he has discarded a burden. He believes he is about to close a deal with Hamilton Holdings that will save his mediocre little tech firm. What he does not know is that Hamilton Holdings is a subsidiary." Maya's eyes widened. "A subsidiary?" "Of Rutherford Global," Harold smirked, a cold, predatory glint in his eye. "Arthur Hamilton works for me. He was there tonight on my orders to audit Danvers. I was considering acquiring Phillips's company as a minor asset. I wanted to see if the man had character." The elevator doors pinged open. "And now?" Maya asked. "Now?" Harold stepped out, his cane hitting the marble floor with a solid thud. I'm going to destroy him. But first, you need to look the part. The presidential suite was a flurry of activity. Racks of clothes lined the walls. A team of 3 women and 2 men stood at attention. They were the city's top stylists, makeup artists and hairdressers, summoned on a Saturday night with a single phone call. "This is my granddaughter," Harold announced to the room. "She has been through hell. You have 1 hour to make her look like she owns heaven." The next hour was a blur of silk, powder, and hairspray. Maya sat in front of the vanity, watching her reflection change. The tired, pale woman with the messy bun and the sad eyes vanished. The makeup artist applied a bold, crimson lip, a color Maya had never dared to wear. Her hair, usually kept in a modest ponytail to avoid annoying Beatrice, was blown out into cascading, glossy waves that fell over her shoulders like dark water. Then came the dress. It wasn't just a garment, it was a weapon. It was a floor-length gown of shimmering gunmetal silver, encrusted with thousands of tiny Swarovski crystals that caught the light with every breath she took. It had a high slit up the left leg and a neckline that was daring yet regal. It hugged her curves, showing a silhouette she had hidden under baggy sweaters for years. "Shoes," the stylist commanded. A pair of Christian Louboutin heels, encrusted with matching crystals, were placed on her feet. They were 4 inches high. I can't walk in these," Maya stammered. "My knee." "You will walk," Harold said from the doorway. He was holding a velvet box. "Pain is temporary. Glory is forever. Stand up, Maya." She stood. The shoes hurt, but the height gave her a strange surge of power. She was taller. She felt formidable. Harold walked over and opened the velvet box. Inside lay a necklace that made the stylists gasp. It was the Rutherford star, a sapphire the size of a pigeon's egg, surrounded by flawless diamonds. "This belonged to your grandmother," Harold said softly, fastening the heavy cold weight around her neck. "She wore it to meet the Queen. Now, you wear it to bury a peasant." He handed her a clutch. Inside was a black titanium credit card and a heavy fountain pen. "What is this for?" "The contract," Harold said grimly. "We are going back to the party." Maya's stomach flipped. "I can't go back there, grandfather. He threw me out. Everyone saw. They'll laugh." Harold gripped her shoulders, forcing her to look him in the eye. "Let them laugh. Hyenas always laugh before the lion tears their throats out. You are not going back as Mrs. Phillips Danvers, the unwanted wife. You are going back as Maya Rutherford, the chairwoman of the board." "Chairwoman." "I signed the papers in the car," Harold winked. "As of 20 minutes ago, you are the majority shareholder of the subsidiary that controls the investors Phillips is begging for money. Technically, my dear, you are his boss." Maya looked in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the girl who cried over burnt toast or apologized for taking up space. This woman looked dangerous. "Okay," Maya whispered. Then, louder. "Okay. Ready?" Harold offered his arm. Maya took it. "Let's go." The atmosphere in the plaza ballroom had shifted from tense to raucous. With Maya gone, Phillips Danvers felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He was holding court near the ice sculpture, a glass of champagne in one hand, his other hand resting possessively on Tiffany St. Clair's waist. It was for the best, really, Phillips was saying to a group of sycophants. She was unstable. I tried to get her help, but some people just refuse to evolve. It's sad, but business must go on. "You're a saint for putting up with it this long, Phillips," Tiffany cooed, sipping her drink. "Honestly, that dress she wore, it was insulting to the venue." Beatrice Danvers nodded in agreement. "I've always said you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. Now that the baggage is gone, we can focus on the future." Arthur Hamilton stood a few feet away, swirling his scotch. He hadn't spoken much since the incident. He just watched Phillips with a look of detached calculation. "Mr. Hamilton," Phillips called out, waving him over. "Come, join us. I was just telling Tiffany about the projections for Q3. With your investment, we're going to crush the competition." Hamilton walked over slowly. "Is that so? And what about your wife? Is she safe?" Phillips waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, she's fine. Probably took a cab back to her old apartment. Don't worry about her. Focus on the deal, Arthur. I have the papers ready in the suite upstairs. We can sign tonight." "Actually," Hamilton checked his watch, "I'm waiting for my superior. He wanted to review the final terms personally." Phillips laughed. "Superior? I thought you were the CEO of Hamilton Holdings." "I am," Hamilton said dryly, "but I answer to the board and the chairman of the parent company." "Well, bring him in." Phillips grinned, drunk on adrenaline and expensive wine. "I'll charm him just like I charmed you." At that moment, the double doors of the ballroom didn't just open, they swung wide with a force that commanded attention. But it wasn't the hotel staff. 4 large men in dark suits with earpieces, private security, marched in first, creating a phalanx. They pushed the crowd back gently but firmly, clearing a wide path through the center of the room. The chatter died down instantly. The band trailed off, the saxophonist lowering his instrument in confusion. "What is this?" Beatrice snapped. "Who dares interrupt?" Then Harold Rutherford stepped through the doors. A collective gasp went through the older generation in the room. They recognized him instantly. The Lion of Wall Street. The man who owned half the shipping lanes in the Atlantic. He was a myth, a recluse, a titan. But he wasn't alone. On his arm was a vision in silver and diamonds. Philip squinted, the alcohol making his vision slightly blurry. He saw the dress first, the way it shimmered like liquid moonlight. He saw the hair, voluminous and rich. He saw the necklace, a sapphire so large it looked fake, though he knew instinctively it wasn't. He didn't recognize her. Not at first. He thought she was a supermodel, or perhaps grand royalty visiting from Europe. The woman walked with a gait that was smooth, predatory, and confident. Her chin was held high, her eyes scanning the room with a cold indifference that sent shivers down spines. She walked past the table where the friend, Gary, sat. Gary dropped his fork. She walked past the security guards who had watched her get thrown out. They looked down at their shoes. Harold and the woman stopped in the direct center of the room, right under the great chandelier. Arthur Hamilton immediately set down his glass and walked over to them, bowing his head slightly. "Sir. Ma'am." Phillips, sensing an opportunity to network with the legendary Harold Rutherford, disentangled himself from Tiffany and straightened his tie. He hurried over, putting on his best winning smile. "Mr. Rutherford," Phillips exclaimed, extending a hand. "What an honor. I had no idea you were in New York. I'm Phillips Danvers. I believe you know my associate, Mr. Hamilton." Harold didn't take the hand. He looked at Phillips's outstretched palm as if it were covered in slime. "I know who you are, Mr. Danvers," Harold rumbled. His voice carried through the silent room without a microphone. "And I believe you know the chairwoman of the board." Phillips looked confused. He looked at the beautiful woman on Harold's arm. She turned her head slowly, locking eyes with him. The recognition hit him like a physical blow to the gut. The eyes. They were the same honey-brown eyes he had looked into that morning. But the warmth was gone. The love was gone. All that remained was ice. Maya," Phillips stuttered. The name fell out of his mouth like a broken tooth. A ripple of shock went through the room. People gasped. Tiffany St. Clair covered her mouth. Beatrice dropped her champagne flute. It shattered on the floor, but no one looked at the glass. Maya smiled. It was a terrifying smile. Sharp. "Hello, Phillips," she said. Her voice was smooth, cultured, stripped of the nervous tremble he was used to. "You seem surprised. Did you not expect me to return?" Phillips looked at her, then at the older man, then back to her. His brain couldn't compute the data. The woman in the Macy's dress was gone. This woman was worth billions. "But I threw you out." "You did," Maya nodded, stepping closer to him. She towered over him in her heels. "You threw out your wife, but you just invited in your new boss." "Boss?" Phillips laughed nervously, looking around for support. "What is this joke? Maya, you're making a scene. Where did you get those clothes? Did you steal them?" Beatrice marched forward, her face red. "Take that off, you thief! Security! Arrest her!" "Silence!" Harold roared. The sound echoed off the vaulted ceiling. "One more word from you, you harpy, and I will buy the bank that holds the mortgage on your house and foreclose on it by morning." Beatrice froze, her mouth open. Harold turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, you all stood by and watched as this man," he pointed a gloved finger at Phillips, "humiliated a woman of grace and dignity. You laughed. You sneered." He put an arm around Maya. "Allow me to introduce you properly. This is not just Maya. This is Maya Antoinette Rutherford, my granddaughter, the sole heiress to the Rutherford estate, and as of this evening, the majority owner of the venture capital firm funding Mr. Danvers's little project." Phillips went pale. "No, that's impossible. She's an orphan. She has nothing." "She has everything," Harold corrected. "And you, Mr. Danvers, have a problem." Maya stepped forward, closing the distance between herself and her husband. She reached into a crystal clutch and pulled out the heavy fountain pen and a folded document Arthur Hamilton handed to her. "The contract with Hamilton Holdings," Maya said, holding up the paper Phillips had been desperate to sign. "You wanted this investment to save your company from bankruptcy, didn't you, Phillips? You over-leveraged on the tech expansion. You're broke without this money." "Maya, listen," Phillips began, sweat beading on his forehead. He reached for her arm, his tone shifting instantly from arrogance to desperation. "Baby, we can talk about this. I was stressed. The pressure, you know how I get. I love you. We can fix this." Maya laughed. It was a genuine laugh, but it lacked humor. "You love me? An hour ago I was pathetic. An hour ago I was a burden." She held the contract over the flame of a nearby candle on a serving table. "Maya, no!" Phillips screamed, lunging forward. 2 security guards stepped in his way, blocking him like a brick wall. Maya watched the corner of the paper catch fire. The flame danced, consuming the ink, consuming Phillips's future. She held it until the heat nipped at her fingers, then dropped the burning ash onto the floor, crushing it with her diamond-encrusted heel. "The deal is dead, Phillips," Maya said coldly. "And so is the marriage." Phillips fell to his knees, staring at the ash. "You can't do this. I built this company." "And you built your own grave," Maya replied. She turned to the crowd, her voice projecting to the back of the room. "Please enjoy the champagne. It's on me. But Mr. Danvers and his mother are leaving." She pointed to the doors. "Security," Maya commanded, using the same tone Phillips had used on her. "Get them out." The fallout from the Plaza Gala was immediate and nuclear. By Monday morning, the photos of Maya, resplendent in silver and diamonds, burning the contract, were on the front page of every tabloid in New York. The headlines ranged from "The Cinderella Revenge" to "The Billionaire Heiress Who Fooled Wall Street." Phillips Danvers, however, was not a man to go down without scratching and biting. Cut off from the Rutherford capital and blacklisted by every major bank in the city, Phillips retreated to the only weapon he had left: public opinion. He hired a sleazy crisis PR firm and booked an exclusive interview with a popular morning talk show. Maya sat in the drawing room of her grandfather's Upper East Side penthouse, watching the large 8K television screen. Harold sat nearby, reading the Wall Street Journal with a look of bored disgust. On the screen, Phillips sat opposite the interviewer, looking haggard, unshaven, and deliberately pathetic. He squeezed out a fake tear. "I didn't know," Phillips sobbed to the camera. "She lied to me for 2 years. She pretended to be poor. She pretended to be an orphan with nothing. I married her out of love. I took care of her. And it turns out she was testing me. It's entrapment. It's fraud. I am the victim here. She and her grandfather humiliated me because I'm a self-made man, and they hate anyone who wasn't born with a silver spoon." The interviewer nodded sympathetically. "So, you're saying you're going to fight this?" "Absolutely," Phillips said, his voice hardening. "I am suing for divorce on the grounds of fraud, and I am entitled to half of her marital assets. If she was a billionaire while we were married, then half of that money belongs to me." Maya turned off the TV. "He is delusional," she said quietly. "He is desperate," Harold corrected, folding his newspaper. "He is trying to use the court of public opinion to force a settlement. He thinks we will pay him off just to make him go away." "Will we?" Harold laughed, a dry, barking sound. "I would rather burn my money in a bonfire than give that leech a single cent. However, he does have one dangerous ally left." "Tiffany St. Clair," Maya guessed. "Her father," Harold said. "Senator St. Clair. He sits on the regulatory committee that oversees my shipping interests. Phillips is hoping the senator will pressure me." Just then, the intercom buzzed. Giles, the head of security, spoke. "Sir, Mrs. Beatrice Danvers is at the concierge desk downstairs. She claims it is a family emergency and refuses to leave." Harold reached for the button to deny her, but Maya stopped his hand. "Let her up," Maya said, her eyes cold. "I want to hear this." 5 minutes later, Beatrice was escorted into the room. She looked nothing like the imperious woman at the gala. Her Chanel suit was wrinkled, and her face was blotchy. She didn't look at Harold. She marched straight to Maya. "You ungrateful little witch," Beatrice screeched, though her voice shook. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The bank froze our personal accounts this morning. They're repossessing Phillips's Porsche. We can't even pay the staff." "Good," Maya said, taking a sip of tea. "Maybe you can learn to iron your own shirts. I did it for 2 years. Beatrice fell onto the sofa, changing tactics instantly. She began to weep. "Maya, please. We're family. I know I was hard on you, but it was only because I wanted you to be better. I wanted you to be a good wife for Phillips. We took you in when you had no one. Doesn't that count for anything?" Maya set her cup down with a sharp clink. "You didn't take me in, Beatrice. You used me as free labor. You made me sleep in the guest room when guests came over so they wouldn't see me. You told everyone I was the maid's daughter." I was stressed," Beatrice stammered. "Look, just talk to Phillips. Call off the lawyers. Give him a small settlement. Maybe 10 million? Just enough to start over. He's your husband. He loves you." Maya stood up and walked to a side table. She picked up a manila envelope that Harold's private investigators had delivered that morning. "He loves me?" Maya opened the envelope and tossed a stack of photos onto the coffee table in front of Beatrice. They were high-resolution images taken over the last 6 months. Phillips and Tiffany entering a hotel. Phillips and Tiffany looking at engagement rings. Philip's texting Gary about how he couldn't wait to dump the stray dog. Beatrice stared at the photos, her face draining of colour. "He was planning to serve me divorce papers next week," Maya said. "He was going to throw me out on the street with nothing. I just beat him to the punch." Maya leaned down, her face inches from her mother-in-law's. "Get out of my house, Beatrice, and tell your son that if he continues with this lawsuit, I won't just take his money. I will release the audio recordings from the night of the gala where he admitted to fraud regarding his company's IPO numbers to Gary." Beatrice gasped. You have that?" "I have everything," Maya lied smoothly. She didn't have the audio, but Beatrice didn't know that. Beatrice scrambled up, clutching her purse, and fled the apartment, as if the devil himself were chasing her. Harold smiled proudly. "You're learning." "I had a good teacher," Maya replied. "Now let's deal with the senator." The divorce deposition was scheduled to take place at the sleek, glass-walled offices of Caldwell, Sterling and Moore, the most expensive law firm in the city. Phillips arrived with a swagger he didn't feel. He was flanked by a cheap lawyer he had found on a billboard, a man named Saul, who wore a suit that was 2 sizes too big. On the other side of the massive conference table sat Maya. She wore a white power suit, tailored to perfection. Next to her was not a lawyer, but 3 of them, and behind them sat Harold Rutherford. "Let's make this quick," Phillips sneered, trying to intimidate her. "I want 50 million, cash, and a public apology for the defamation, or else Senator St. Clair is going to launch an investigation into Rutherford Global's offshore accounts." Maya didn't blink. She slid a single sheet of paper across the table. "What is this?" Phillips asked. "It's a press release," Maya said calmly. "It's going out in 10 minutes. Phillips read the headline, and his swagger evaporated. "Senator St. Clair announces resignation amidst ethics scandal." "What?" Phillips looked up, panic setting in. This isn't real." "It is," Harold spoke up from the back of the room. "You see, Phillips, when you threaten a shark, you better make sure your boat doesn't have holes in it. We did a little digging into the senator's finances. It turns out he was accepting bribes from a construction firm. We gave him a choice: resign and retire quietly, or go to prison." Harold checked his Rolex. He chose retirement, and as a parting gift, he gave us a statement regarding his daughter's relationship with you. Maya pressed a button on the remote control on the table. A video screen on the wall flickered to life. It was Tiffany St. Clair. She was sitting in a well-lit room, looking perfect and completely unbothered. "My relationship with Phillips Danvers was strictly professional," Tiffany said to the camera, lying through her teeth with the skill of a politician's daughter. "I had no idea he was married. He told me he was a widower. As soon as I found out the truth at the gala, I cut all ties. I am a victim of his manipulation, just like everyone else." The screen went black. Phillips stared at the black void. His jaw worked, but no sound came out. His ace in the hole, his future wife, his political connection, gone. She had thrown him under the bus to save her own reputation. "She's lying!" Phillips screamed, standing up and slamming his hands on the table. "She knew. She planned it with me." "Does it matter?" Maya asked softly. "She has the senator's PR machine behind her. You have—" Saul. Phillips's lawyer, Saul, closed his folder. "Mr. Danvers, I think we should settle." "I'm not settling," Phillips roared. "I still have the company. My tech firm is worth millions. I don't need you." "Actually," Maya interrupted. "About that." She signaled to one of her lawyers, who placed a thick stack of documents on the table. "While you were busy doing TV interviews, the bank called in your loans. You defaulted. Your company, Danvers Tech, Went into receivership yesterday afternoon. Phillips felt the room spin. No, I have 30 days to cure the default. You did, Maya said, but the bank sold the debt to a private equity firm. Who? Phillips whispered. Me, Maya said. Silence descended on the room, heavy, suffocating silence. I own your debt, Phillips. I own your building. I own your servers. I own the chair you sit in at your office, and I am foreclosing. Phillips collapsed back into his chair. He looked small. The handsome, arrogant titan of industry was gone, replaced by a broken man in a suit he could no longer afford. Why? He croaked, tears streaming down his face. Real tears this time. Why go this far? You could have just left. Maya looked at him, and for a second she remembered the man who had bought her ice cream on their first date. She remembered the hope she had felt. I tried to leave, Phillips, she said, her voice trembling slightly before stabilizing. I walked out into the rain. I was willing to disappear. But you followed me. You mocked me. You broke my heel and left me bleeding on the sidewalk because you thought I was trash. She stood up, buttoning her jacket. I didn't destroy you because I hate you, Phillips. I destroyed you because you needed to learn that you cannot treat people like disposable objects. She turned to her lawyers. Have him sign the divorce papers. He gets nothing, no alimony, no assets. In exchange, I won't sue him for the misuse of company funds during our marriage, which would send him to jail for 5 years. She looked down at her ex-husband one last time. Sign the papers, Phillips, or go to prison. It's your choice. Phillips's hand shook violently as he picked up the pen. He didn't look up. He signed his name, signing away his marriage, his company, and his pride. Maya didn't wait to watch. She turned and walked out of the glass office, Harold Rutherford right beside her. As they reached the elevator, Harold patted her hand. How do you feel? Maya took a deep breath. She felt lighter than she had in years. I feel, she said, a small smile playing on her lips, like getting a burger. I'm starving. Harold laughed. A burger it is. But first, we have one last stop. Where? The conclusion. Harold winked. You need to tell the world who you really are. 1 year later, the New York winter was particularly cruel that year. The wind whipped down Fifth Avenue like a physical slap, cutting through layers of wool and polyester alike. Outside the gilded entrance of Le Jardin, one of the city's newest and most exclusive restaurants, a man stood shivering in a valet uniform that was slightly too tight around the shoulders. His name tag, crooked and plastic, read simply, Phillips. Phillips Danvers rubbed his gloved hands together, trying to generate some friction. His knuckles were raw from the cold. It had been a long shift. He had parked Bentleys, Ferraris, and Maybachs for the last 6 hours, handling keys to cars he used to own. Cars he had been forced to sell to pay off legal fees and outstanding debts. His fall had been absolute. After the divorce and the dissolution of Danvers Tech, he found himself unemployable in the corporate world. Maya's revelation about his fraudulent IPO numbers had made him a pariah. No board would touch him. No bank would lend to him. Even his mother, Beatrice, had been forced to sell the family estate and move into a 2-bedroom condo in New Jersey, spending her days calling Phillips to complain about the lack of closet space. Hey, buddy, wake up! A harsh voice snapped Phillips out of his misery. A young man in a tailored suit, no older than 25, was dangling a set of keys in front of Phillips's face. Sorry, sir, Phillips muttered, taking the keys. He kept his head down. He lived in constant fear of being recognized, though the beard he now grew to hide his face helped. Make it quick, and don't scratch it, it's brand new, the young man sneered, turning back to his date. Phillips jogged to the car. As he slid into the leather seat, the smell of expensive cologne hit him, the same cologne he used to wear. He gripped the steering wheel, fighting back a wave of nausea. This was his life now, serving the people he used to look down on. Tonight was a big night at Le Jardin. The restaurant had been rented out for a private charity gala. The rumor among the staff was that the host was some reclusive billionaire launching a new foundation for foster children. The tips were expected to be huge, which was the only reason Phillips had agreed to work the double shift. He needed the money for rent. By 10 p.m., the guests began to filter out. Phillips ran back and forth, retrieving cars, opening doors, bowing his head. Then, the main doors of the restaurant swung open, and the manager hurried out, looking flustered. "Clear the lane," the manager hissed at the valets. "The hostess is leaving. I want the Rolls-Royce pulled up now." Phillips scrambled. He was the closest driver. He sprinted to the VIP lot, his breath pluming in the icy air. He found the car, a custom phantom black Rolls-Royce with diplomatic flags on the fender. It was a beast of a machine. He drove it carefully to the curb, putting it in park. He jumped out and rushed to open the rear passenger door, executing the perfect bow he had been trained to do. "Your car, ma'am," Phillips said to the pavement. A pair of shoes stepped out onto the curb. They weren't high heels. They were sensible, elegant, flat velvet boots. "Thank you," a voice said. Phillips froze. He knew that voice. It was the voice that used to whisper good night to him, the voice that used to hum in the kitchen. He slowly looked up. Maya stood there. But she wasn't the terrified girl in the rain anymore, nor was she the vengeful fury in the silver dress. She looked peaceful. She wore a long camel coat over a white dress. Her hair was pulled back loosely. She held a sleeping toddler in her arms, a little girl with curly hair. Standing next to her was a man. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a kind face. He had a protective hand on Maya's back. It wasn't Harold Rutherford. Harold had passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 months prior, leaving the entire empire to Maya. This man was Dr. Lucas Bennett, the pediatrician Maya had met while setting up her foundation's hospital wing. Maya looked at the valet. She paused, her hand halfway to the door handle. She looked at the name tag. Phillips. Then she looked at his face. Phillips wanted the ground to open up and swallow him whole. He wanted to run. He wanted to scream. But he couldn't move. He just stood there, holding the door for the wife he had thrown away. "Maya?" he whispered. It was a plea, a question, a sob all in one. Dr. Bennett looked at Phillips, then at Maya. "You know him, honey?" Maya looked at Phillips for a long, stretching moment. She took in the cheap uniform, the tired eyes, the red, chapped hands. She saw the karma that had come full circle. She could have insulted him. She could have laughed. She could have told her new husband, "This is the loser who broke my heart." But Maya Rutherford had evolved beyond him. He was no longer a villain in her story. He was just a footnote. "No," Maya said softly, turning her gaze back to her husband and the sleeping child in her arms. "I don't know him. Just someone from a past life." She stepped into the car, settling the baby on her lap. "Drive safe," Dr. Bennett said kindly to Phillips, pressing a folded $100 bill into Phillips's hand. The heavy door thudded shut. Phillips stood on the curb, clutching the money. He watched through the tinted glass as the car pulled away. He saw Maya lean her head on the doctor's shoulder. She didn't look back. Not even once. "Move it, buddy," the manager yelled from behind him. "We got a line forming." Phillips blinked, the tears finally spilling over, mixing with the freezing rain on his face. He looked at the $100 bill. It was more than he used to give Maya for her weekly grocery allowance. "Yes, sir," Phillips choked out. He shoved the bill into his pocket and ran to get the next car, a ghost haunting the life he could have had, disappearing into the grey mist of the New York night. And that is the story of how a single act of cruelty unravelled a life, and how a hidden legacy revealed the truth. Phillips Danvers thought he was discarding a broken accessory, but he ended up throwing away a diamond to chase after glass. It serves as a powerful reminder that we should never judge others by their current circumstances, because the wheel of fortune is always turning. The person you mistreat today could be the person holding the keys to your future tomorrow. Maya's journey from a silenced wife to a powerful matriarch proves that true worth isn't about what you wear, but who you are. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and dramatic justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. And tell me in the comments, do you think Phillips deserved forgiveness, or did he get exactly what he deserved? Type Team Maya if you're on her side. Thanks for watching.